Let's talk about nomenclature. As you go down the order from most broad group to more specific, you change the way you actually write the word. So it's pretty consistent from domain, kingdom, phylum, class, and order down until you get to genus. Once you get to genus, you're writing in italics, and genus is capitalized. The species names are not capitalized. So in this example, you have the genus written under species, but then this is the species here that's not capitals. This example is a red fox, Vulpes vulpes, and this example, like a lot of examples, has a species whose genus is the same as the species name. So this is Vulpes vulpes, gorilla gorilla is another example like that. So what are we looking at here? Are we looking at a species or are we looking at a genus? Well, it's capitalized and it's italics, so we know that this is a genus. But what's SP? SP is a shorthand that biologists use to reference a species. So this is a hominid, this is Homo, but what species? We don't know. It could be a Denisovian, it could be Homo neanderthalis, it could be Homo sapiens. We don't know. Right here, we're just speaking broadly about a genus. Well, how about this? The H is shorthand for the genus. So we already mentioned Homo, so now we don't have to mention the genus anymore. We can just write capital H, italics, period, sapiens. Now sapiens is not capitalized, so we know that's a species. So now we know we're talking about the species sapiens within the genus H, which in this case is Homo. So what about here? Is this a species or is this a genus? Pan is capitalized and it's italicized, so we know that this is a genus, but we don't know what species we're talking about. Pan is a genus that includes the chimpanzee and the bonobo. Here's another example. Here is a genus, gorilla, with the capital G. What species of gorilla? We don't know. Did you know that there's more than one species of gorilla? Well, here's a species of gorilla. It's gorilla gorilla. We already said the genus, so we don't have to mention it again. It's italicized in capital with a period. And now we have the species, which is not capitalized, but still italicized. So this is gorilla gorilla. The western gorilla, western lowland gorilla, is gorilla gorilla, and the subspecies is also gorilla. So if you're referencing a western lowland gorilla, you would say there's a gorilla gorilla gorilla. What about this? This is one of my favorite genuses in the world, just because the name is so fun. This is Milvago. So we know we're talking about a genus in this case. The species, we don't know which species within Milvago, but one species is Milvago chima chima, which is a really fun Latin name. So what about this? Is this a species or a genus? Well, it's neither. Whatever group this is, we know it's somewhere above species and genus. When we learn the Latin names of an organism, it's helpful because it provides some information in regards to the genus and the species. Here's a broad genus, Myrmotherla. This includes a bunch of birds that look very similar. Well, they did some genetics on these birds, and they found that there's actually two distinct groups within Myrmotherla. And then they did something that scientists like to do a lot. They changed the name. The genus name is now Myrmotherla. This other group on the left is now Epinecrophila. So the genus name now infers some information about the relationship between these two groups of birds. Without knowing their specific relationships, without looking at a taxonomic tree, just by knowing their genus, you can now assume that the Epinecrophilas are probably more related to each other than they are the Myrmotherlas. And the Myrmotherlas over there are probably all related to each other more so than they are the Epinecrophilas. And if you look at a taxonomic tree and find Epinecrophila, you'll see that it nests over here with Neocatantes. And if you look at Myrmotherlas, you see that they're on a totally different branch. So now, without even looking at a tree like this, just by knowing they have a different genus, you can infer that the Epinecrophilas and the Myrmotherlas are probably on their own branches in separate taxonomic groups. So a taxonomic name can tell you about a relationship. Now, when I say clade, I'm talking about a distinct group, a group of organisms that includes all of the descendants. But not all groups that we're familiar with make up a clade. Now, what do I mean? Well, let's look at the dinosaurs. Here's the dinosaurs. All the organisms past Dinosauria. So if you look, all of these organisms have a common ancestor that made Dinosauria. And if you follow to the right, you'll see that there's one group that we don't traditionally view as a dinosaur, and those are the birds. But according to this tree, birds are well embedded in the group Dinosauria. Another group are the reptiles. When we think of reptiles, sure, we think of crocodiles, we think of turtles, we think of snakes and lizards, and if you're familiar with the tuatara, then you think of the tuatara too. Well, there's another group embedded within reptiles that we usually don't throw in that group, and that's the birds. So when we say reptiles, we're not talking about a monophyletic clade. We're talking about a bunch of organisms that we traditionally thought of as scaly, cold-blooded animals. But we now know that birds are actually reptiles, and they are also dinosaurs. This group here is made up of extant, which means not extinct species. That's why birds is there. But if we could add dinosaurs, it would be there on a branch next to birds just after the split with crocodiles. Back here, you can see that Crocodilia is actually the outgroup of the dinosaurs, which is the birds as well. So for all that, we thank Linnaeus